We should be good to go. Confirm that we're legally posted. Oh, I think you're hooking us up yet, right?
We are good. Yep. Yep. Everything is legally posted.
Alrighty. Approval of the minutes from March 14th. Motion to second, any changes, amendments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition, motion carries unanimously. Public comments on agenda items. We got anybody on Zoom? Good to go?
You look it up on your pen, please.
Agency report.
Sorry. Thank you.
NRCS came out with our annual report for Wisconsin for fiscal year 2023. And our fiscal year runs from October 1 to September 30th.
Thanks, Julie.
And it has it kind of broke down by each program. And then within that program, how many millions of dollars or millions or tens of thousands of dollars were obligated to each of those programs. And it has it broke down by certain fund pools within that program. And then it has our top 10 practices that we contract, with the top 3 being cover crop, prescribed grazing. Oh no, cover crop, brush management, prescribed. And no till coming in at number 4. That's all I have to.
On the no-till, have you had an increase?
I don't know.
Much of an increase in that one?
I would have to check to see what it was in 2022, but it seems every year it's getting. Seems to be more, so. And that, again, that doesn't, that's not the actual amount of no-till that's actually happening. I'm sure there's obviously more
Right.
happening throughout the state that aren't in our programs too, so.
We're good. Any questions? Hearing none, thanks for your report. We'll move on to the director's report. Number F.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Handful of updates for you. The first one, number 1, the livestock waste management ordinance. I will be going to the Towns Association unit meeting tonight in Neenah. And I'm just going to give them a report on the livestock waste management ordinance and when permits are needed. We're thinking we're just going to keep trying to hit these towns up to let them know when these permits are needed, so we have less chance of having the hearing like we had in March. So we're going to try. We'll keep sending out letters every year, and then I'm just going to give a brief overview to the towns tonight. In regards to the hearing, it was included in your minutes with the decision based on the hearing last March. So that was sent to the Stones as far as the decision of this committee. And they have 30 days if they want to appeal that to the circuit court. And as of now, we have not heard anything. The clock started ticking on March 20th when Chairman Fari had signed the decision. So April 20th will be probably 30 days, and then we'll know at that point if they're going to appeal it or not. So if they do, then it ends up in circuit courts. If they don't, then we will work with them to get the permit issued and the fee paid out. So that's the latest on that. The DAD work plan and grant application, I'm currently working on that. So every year we have to do a work plan with DAD. So that's for 2024. So it's looking at all the things we do, and there's a lot of details in that work plan that gets submitted. And that's part of getting our funding for cost sharing and for our staff within the department. And part of that is our grant application. So that's where they pay for, it'd be the first position, 100% the state pays for, and then the second position, 70%. It's not even quite 70% based on what it's looking like. So, so we put all those numbers together in the DAC for the grant application, and that's due on the 15th. So I'm working to get that done. The Climate Smart Commodities Grant. It's been frustrating to say the least. We just found out there's more delays because of USDA. So we're looking like we can't sign anything up until fall for farmers. And as you know, we hired Eric within the department to start with that grant. So what we're doing is we're doing as much outreach as we can, and we're getting farmers lined up for no-till cover crops, low disturbance manure, getting that waiting list, and then we'll get those contracts signed for fall time. So hopefully there's not another delay. I know a lot of the counties are frustrated that it's taking so long to get these simple things answered. But we'll keep plugging away and keep the grant moving, so. Annual tree sale next week on the 9th, we have our tree sale. And to give you a comparison, in 2023, we had about 20,000 trees. We're gonna have over 150,000 trees just in Winnebago County planted this year. So it's quite a change. We have a lot of trees that were sold. So we bumped up our supplies and we're getting ramped up for tree day next week. So we have, on the 9th, we have 4 of our tree planters going out for planting. And there'll be more demand than probably normal just because of the number of trees. So
What type of tree?
it's not ash, no, not ash.
Just kidding, Chad.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
a shame because ashes are one of my favorites.
Yeah, they are a nice tree.
Damn.
Tamarack.
Tamarack are nice. Yep, there's tamaracks, there's, your hardwoods, deciduous, and then you have
Okay.
your evergreen trees, there's shrubs. So a number of different things, and that's through the DNR, we work with them on that. And that's right back in our building back here, we'll have all the trees brought there, we get them all sorted. And then everybody comes and picks them up next Tuesday between 2 and 5 or 5:30 to get the
Most of them
trees.
are conifers.
It's a mix, there's a lot of hardwoods too. Yeah, it's a
What's
mix.
a primary conifer?
I'd say white
pine?
pine and white spruce are pretty popular. And then red pine, here it's not the best tree in Winnebago, but you get out by Washera, red pine. is great.
Junipers
So
are nice. Do you ever do juniper?
we don't do junipers, no, cedars are in there, so
Red cedar?
red, yeah.
Who's buying all of these trees? Are these farmers that are,
It's,
One guy's doing what, 80,000?
that's one, and that's even above the 150, so there's one person buying 80,000 that's getting planted on 80 acres. And then it's getting flipped into, it's like a trade, a carbon trade or something going on with that one. Otherwise, there's farmers, there's private landowners, the schools get trees sometimes too as well. So it's a mix. The only negative with this program is it's higher quantity trees you have to order. So at some point, if things ever slow down in this department, we could set up a tree program where we sell in smaller quantities. Some counties do that, like in 25 or 50 trees, we'd have to sort them and it creates some revenue for the department. We talked about it, but right now we're working with the DNR with these larger quantities, so.
In addition to doing that all day, then we have, by directive of administration, we have this, what are we calling, organizational meeting?
Orientation,
Orientation meeting.
yep, so that would be,
So,
I think it's,
He's gotta show up for that.
so I'm gonna be maybe a little dirty when I show up to that meeting, but that's all right.
So the dude that got 80,000 trees, do you have all those 80,000 out here, or are they being delivered specifically to him?
That's a good question. So for that, they're going right to the site for the 80,000. It's
I
hard
was
to do
just
that.
gonna say, that's a lot.
That's a lot of
That's
trees.
a lot of trees.
Yeah, I did 11,000 on my land and that was enough back in 2007, and those trees, a day and a half, which wasn't too bad. Yeah, with the planters we have, especially the bigger Sturgeon Bay, it's pretty awesome. You can get a lot of trees done quick.
How about if you do them by hand?
Oh, that's a whole nother.
I did it once years ago.
No. I did 1,100 trees by hand and that was more
Really?
than enough.
Oh my
I did.
goodness.
It's- Yeah, that's pushing it. So planters are nice. It goes really, really quick with the planters. Okay, wildlife damage program. I wanted to give you an update on the deer donation program. So like we talked about at the last meeting with Bex, our processor.
Yeah.
And what happened with the CWD and those 10 deer. We reached out to them. We haven't heard back. We reached out a couple times. They were gonna think about it. What we were gonna approach with them is if we tried to get them reimbursed for those 10 deer, would they be open to continuing being the processor for Winnebago County? So that's how we approached them, and we just haven't heard back yet. So if anything advances with that, I'll let you all know if it's something we want to pursue as far as trying to get them reimbursed for those deer. I'd only want to do it if they would agree to be the processor in 2025, so we'll see what happens.
and if they aren't do we just drop that program? Is that,
It doesn't get dropped, but we just don't have a processor in this county, so people can still go to adjacent areas where there are processors and still donate the deer.
okay,
We'll probably know our share on that, and maybe Calumet.
I think Outagamie has some,
Yeah.
on their website, it shows where the processors are.
Yeah.
We're just limited in this county. We don't have a whole lot of them besides Bex.
and verge sounding horrible, it would be one less headache for us to deal with if it doesn't. We don't have a processor, we can't
Yeah,
do anything.
yep, so we wouldn't be chasing down the invoice and all that, so. The other part with the program, and I mean, this was rumblings a couple of years back with the administration of the program, the counties do it. But I've been hearing rumblings that there could be something brought forward where DNR is trying to take that back.
Take it back, yeah.
And we would use that local control, but
Opposed because we wanna keep.
yeah,
local
so it's,
control.
I think it's surfacing again, so we'll see if that
Yeah.
flares up again, deal with it at that time, so. The couple other things, we hot off the press this morning, we just finished our 2023 annual report. So I will pass a few of these around, so this is showcasing some of the work that we did in 2023. So what I'll do is, this will go around, I'll send it to the whole county board. We'll send it, I think we'll send it out to all the towns, that might be good to have
Good
them,
idea.
Mhm.
them.
When are you gonna do county board?
What do you think? I was
Think
debating,
on May meeting,
May, I was gonna email it,
okay?
is what I was gonna do, but I'll probably get the new list served with the new board
Yeah.
members.
Kinda let things settle down here.
I think so. Yeah, I want to make sure we capture the new board members. So, I'm really happy how it turned out. Emily and Jody were instrumental. I mean, all of us chipped in, but they really put this together. And in my opinion, I think it's the nicest one we've had so far in the department.
Who did the book itself, the format?
That would've-
You put the information in it, but.
We all worked on the articles, and then Jody and Emily worked in a program called Canva. So that's how they developed this.
Okay,
And then that's what created it. So it's just, there's really nice graphics, and I just think it flows. It looks a lot more professional than some of the other ones we've done.
we have the capability to turn it into a pamphlet like this, then?
Yeah, yep, we can do that. And then once we have the digital copy, it'll be that flip page, so it'll be a nice way to look through it instead of trying to scroll up and down, reviewing it, so. So yeah, a lot of work went into it, but I think it helps us showcase what we do, and it'll go out to the whole state as well, showcasing all the moving parts that we have going on. within the-
Yeah, you got a tree planter in the back there on page 24.
There you go, that's the Sturgeon Bay.
Somebody's gotta sit in the back of that thing, you know?
Yeah, so when I was planting, my dad was driving the tractor and my cousin and I were in the back, and my dad was getting a kick out of bouncing us up and
Yeah.
down like a carnival ride.
Yeah.
So
But,
that's a tree planter, that little.
yep, so
They
what,
make bigger ones, but I think that's
What does it
the
look
one
like?
we actually,
yeah,
that's all right.
yeah, this is a pretty heavy duty one, that
Yeah.
cut a pretty good hole in the ground, so on the front of it, it hooks up to the three point of the tractor.
Mhm.
And there's a big cutting disc that opens up a big slit. And then you sit in there and you drop the trees in, and then there's wheels that come behind and close
Oh.
behind it, is how it works, so. You have two people in there, what works nice is one person sorting the trees, another and handing to the guy that's going, is how it works. So,
Then you stop at the end of every acre for coffee break.
yeah,
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 you do that.
and then do it again, yep. Yeah, so it speeds up the whole process, and the picture on the right is of hand planters, which we sell here as well. For $60 if you wanna do it by hand, which it works great if you have, say, 500 or less trees, it's a nice way to do it, so.
Copy this to the governor. I think you should.
Yeah, I could do that.
I would definitely send a copy to his office.
He was at our conference, so he
Was
was
he?
right by our table and was really personable and met a lot of us.
Oh, he is.
Really nice guy. Yeah. Yeah, I'll make a note of that.
That's well done, nice.
There you go.
Thank
The
you.
coffee table.
Yeah. It was definitely teamwork in the department. We all did our part, and had input on it, so.
Chad, I guess, page 26, if it's a red zone spread, I believe most of our county is in the red.
Yeah, that's certain times of year. So that runoff risk is based on like if there's precipitation coming, I think,
Oh.
that sort of thing. So that was just a shot
Mm.
in time. So it just
Okay.
depends on the forecast and then you can look and see if you're in the red or not. Yeah.
Yeah, this is, your group does such great work.
Thank you.
It does such great work. I love the photo.
Oh, yeah, that was right out front here of the rain garden. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, this was straight off of we took our Spirit Fund policy plan and took the cover and put it on the front here. And then in the center of this is the spread on the Spirit Fund program. So I did a write-up on that as far as the Spirit Fund program for the department, so. We tried to make it where you open this up and it would fold open right to
Right to it.
right to it, is the idea, yeah.
That's not like any centerfold I've ever been used to.
No details.
Nothing else I can say. I was a part of the Spirit Fund.
There you go.
That.
Part of that
Yeah.
legacy, for sure. And with that note, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure working with all of you, this committee over the last 2 years. And Julie, you're going to be missed. You've been such a big part of the committee for a long, long time. And
Yeah, I'll be enjoying my Tuesdays without being in a 6-hour meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Although that should change, maybe. With the new board, maybe.
I don't know.
right,
There's still a lot of talkers that got reelected, so.
yeah. Yeah, so yes, good luck to you in your next
Well, thank you.
endeavors, and Kay as well will be missed, and she's has
Yeah,
other things to keep her busy.
Miss these meetings.
Yeah, but it was, like you said, it's neat that you're a part of the biggest thing that's ever happened in this department, let alone the whole state for a land conservation department, in
Yeah.
my opinion. So pretty neat stuff.
Moving on to chair's report, I think I'll mimic pretty much what Chad is saying. We're on a real pleasure working with this committee during this time frame has done some really nice work, outstanding. I'm hopeful for those on the board that are gonna continue on the board that maybe want to sign up again. Hopefully you stay on the committee and we can keep it going for another 2 years. Once again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, really have.
And you, Chuck, run a good meeting.
Thank you. I hope it's been a little educational, the quasi judicial issue, and now everybody's been exposed to that process. So, yeah, it's not only good work, a good department, and more importantly, the work we do. I think it's probably some of the most important work we're doing in the county.
I think so too.
Yeah, so, and of
I
course,
think
there's the
people-
educational aspect of it.
People tend to write off the land conservation department. Oh, it's just a little department, but they don't realize the big.
What we're actually doing,
It will handle the future of this county.
And
yeah,
that's where, again,
very much so.
this was a lot of work, but it definitely shows, you think we're a small department, but there's a lot, as you all know, going on here, and that's part of the value in doing it.
And we appreciate yours and Chuck's work on that too.
Yes.
Having said that, I guess we'll move on to the business item, which I'm told, I got scolded a little bit. And I'll explain this when we get to number 2. Apparently, Corp Council issued an order that we're not supposed to have any action items on the agenda because Robert's rules require that everything ends and there's no carryover to the new board from the previous term.
Yes.
So Tom and I talked about this in detail. Because we're only doing an action item on a cost share agreement. There's nothing going forward to the county board for approval. This is in-house by committee. Okay, so I'm gonna go forward with it. I may get hollered at.
I would agree. This is not, if it's not advancing to the county
Don't
board,
advance to the county. board.
then we're okay. Now, if we had something else, I just found that out too. I didn't realize that until
Yeah, I
this
got told
recently.
yesterday at a meeting.
Yeah, so if they.
So I think we're okay.
At solid waste, we had the same issue come up yesterday, so.
Did you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, so.
Mr. Chairman, did we want to just check with our citizen members for the next term that they're on board for the next 2 years, if that does go to county board in April for Dan and Bruce?
Yeah, well, it will be. It'll be
Okay.
further appointments?
Yes,
Yes.
that will be, okay,
That will be done on, I believe, the end of the month on the 28th at the business meeting.
okay,
If I'm quoting the right date here.
okay.
I don't know.
No, 23rd.
I got no county board meetings in my phone.
Chad,
So we.
Yes, Bruce.
You two gentlemen would
It-
seek reappointment?
Yeah.
yes, I would continue to sit on the committee if someone would allocate me, absolutely.
Okay, we'll take care of that for you gentlemen.
And thanks for stepping back up.
All right, so let's go with the business items. We're on H and identified as number 1. That's a report on the installation of a manure storage system closure practice in the county. And I assume that dovetailed Bruce's initiative on his farm?
Yep, this will be a good precursor of what we do and why we do. And
Yeah, it costs so much, right?
no,
Floor's yours now.
So one of the things that we have right now, and I'm sure some of you remember talking about the livestock waste storage facilities abandonments. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the purpose and then, of course, the challenges that we always run into with these, to better understand some of the unknowns we face from time to time. So start ahead. Hey, so to begin, ordinance requirements. In regards to our livestock waste management ordinance, an idle livestock facility is a facility that stores waste that has not had any manure added to it for at least a year. And there is evidence that it will likely be unused in the future. So at that point, after we've seen that no livestock has been added for a year, we can deem it idle. And then it falls into our next requirement. All right, so now you haven't had manure in it for a year. Now.
But it hasn't been emptied yet? It's still,
Correct, it could
Okay.
still have manure in it. It could still be, it could be either or.
all
It could
right.
be empty or it could have manure in it. Oh, there's my pointer. Oh, it doesn't work on that screen, huh? Wow, that's weird.
Yeah.
All right, so no pointer for you. Vanna Whited.
Yeah, that's right.
Have the livestock waste storage facility. So once we have it, had it in a year. Now I gotta look at what is our resource concern? Is there manure in it? Do we need to take a look at trying to get it to safe? Because what ends up happening over time with these manure pits, some of which we may have designed, some of which were built way before we had rules and requirements. So we have no idea what's underneath them or how they were constructed. So now we have to start looking at, okay, it's idle. Once it's been unused for 2 years, has been idle 2 years, now they want to bring manure back into it. Then we have to go and inspect it, bring it back up to standards and specs, make sure that it's good quality and it's gonna meet all of our requirements. So, one of the things we're looking at, what is the resource concern? Is there manure in it yet? Some of these manure pits are, $250,000, up to maybe even over $1 million to build. So if they get rid of the cows, they may not want to get rid of this resource in case they want to bring cattle back in the future or cows back in the future or use it in another way. So I look at, can we remove all of the manure out of there? Get it down to good, clean soils or get it down to clean concrete and then leave it sit to a point where down the road, they decide they want to bring livestock back in, we'll reassess it. Or they get to a point where they're like, you know what, we're never gonna use this again. Let's officially abandon it. Which brings us to the abandonment closure process, which is taking a look at what's in there. And that's what I'm gonna kind of go into is some of the different ones that we've abandoned on the road. So one of the ones that we were just recently working with is the Terry and Lynn Lightfoot manure storage. This storage was built back in the late 70s, early 80s, way before we even had a ordinance that pertained to that. They did it themselves without any kind of design or oversight. Used it up, this is it in use in 2009. Recently Sheila was going through updating and looking at all our livestock waste storage facilities. And as we go, this is it in 2009. You can see in 2015, they started to push in the sides. And then by 2020, you can see it's almost completely gone. But you can still see some of the green here, which is from some of that nutrient still residing in that soil. So basically what they have done is they just went out and they pushed in the sides and filled it in with whatever they could find or have dropped off at their farms. So now we've got a little, what I call a poop McMuffin in there. So Brandon's first week here, I brought him up to this farm so we could do an assessment of the site, meet with the landowners. The landowners were not very excited about having to go back after they filled this all in and redo the process. So they are not extremely happy with us that we are even out there talking to them. So this has been a very
Contentious?
contentious, yes, heated, contentious process. So after many, many discussions and lots of yelling and just basically telling them this is not a iffy, maybe we have to do this, maybe we don't. I mean, this is very black and white. We have to abandon this properly. You have already made it unusable. It's been idle for over 2 years, so now we have to clean it out, do it right. And so part of the problem by pushing in the side slopes already, funding through NRCS is based on current volume. So by pushing in those sides, now the current volume is only half as much. So that cut the cost sharing they could receive.
If I might interrupt, I assume their contention was part of it is not only the labor involved, but the cost to do it, right? So
Correct.
that's,
If I could guarantee that this would be done without any cost to them, they were okay with it.
sure, that human nature, right?
But there's no way I can guarantee that. Our cost sharing does not guarantee 100% payment.
Yeah, okay.
And an enforcement situation, should we cost share it? That's where we were struggling internally too for,
And they just called, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
if they would have called ahead, we would have cost shared it at 90%.
Yeah.
Well, probably 70% at that time.
Well, that time, yeah.
Well, it's a big chunk of it, you know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
This is where this communication thing is.
and I mean, I don't expect people to remember our conversation 20 years ago. But we did meet with them when this was already in play, discuss the ordinance, but again, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah,
So,
And just for your awareness, we could have cited. They worked with us, so we took the approach, let's work with them as long as they're willing to do this and work with NRCS and our department. We'll move forward, but if they push back too much, then we were gonna go the citing option, but we luckily did not have
And
which is
I
always,
would never like to go there either.
to. No, we.
It's not where I wanna be.
it's always been the focus, I think, of the committee and the department to work with people to
Yeah.
the best of our ability. This drop the hammer thing is not something we normally do at all.
No,
but you also mentioned that, 20 years ago, you told them that this would happen. If I had a manure pit like that and I was told that it was gonna be a challenge to get it closed, I wouldn't forget that.
Yeah,
I would quick try to push in the sides when nobody's watching and see if I could get away with it. So I don't think they forgot that they had to do it properly, in my opinion.
yeah. Yeah, so I can't say that I never present, because they did have the information at that time.
Yeah.
But, you know, that was a long time ago for,
So the bottom line is, they're gonna do it, right?
yes, so,
And how much we're gonna help them out.
so I did go through the EQIP program,
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's up to them what they wanna go with. I can say that I can pay you 70%, or you can take a chance with EQIP, and how much they're gonna fund. Sometimes with EQIP, you get closer to 90%, or even maybe 100%. So for that option, that's why I thought that would be better for them, because the other option is they're gonna have to pay 30%.
Well, and-
NRCS.
Again, it's an enforcement situation, so I would have taken it to all of you because it's an enforcement, should we cost share it? That would have been your decision if it would have went through our department as well.
Yeah.
And that's no guarantee.
And I was so gonna give this design to Levi.
That's right.
It was right there, and then he's like, I'm leaving, and then he left us.
Right.
And he came back.
And they came back right when it's done.
What do you know?
Yeah, right.
It's like, Levi, here you go.
Right, right.
It's a fun project. So just this past year, we started, so this is our construction check back in 12/27.
So I still get my boots dirty. That's me in the picture, so you all.
Include that in so you can actually see. I was on vacation and he needed an emergency, you gotta get out here and check us today, so.
They caught your good side, I see that.
So we've been working with the son, and the son, I have to say, has been pleasant. He has been really easy to work with. It's been, Terry and Lynn kind of removed themselves from this project, and I think have kind of turned the operation more over to their two sons. And so we've been working with Tony on this, and he's been really easy to work with, which has been very nice. So basically, the design criteria I have are aerial photos and the fact that Terry and Lynn one time had a cow get stuck in there and it didn't drown. So that's how I determined how deep it was. So. So how deep is it? Well, I don't know. We had a cow in there one time. It didn't drown and
How big was the cow?
Was it on 2 legs or 4 legs?
Yeah.
So sometimes these are the challenges that we face when we're trying to do a complete design with unknown information. So at this point, I think we were at about, I should say when Brandon and I went out there, we did some test borings. We had about 1.5 feet of soil, then about 2 feet of this poop, this bluish organic poop, and then it was solid red clay. And so I thought, okay, that's kind of meeting up with that.
Yeah.
We pushed the side slopes in. We're gonna be sitting around that elevation. And when Chad and Alex went out there, that was about correct with that. I mean, it was probably about 4 feet deep in there, something along those lines. But Chad was still finding evidence of manure, so he told them to keep digging in one area. And so then we went back out. Well, they dug down because there must have been, what I'm thinking is when they pushed in those side slopes, it left a nice layer of clay across the middle. And so when I bored down, I think I was hitting that fill, and then there was more poop below that. So they kept digging, and in the bottom here, they're actually all the way down sitting on bedrock. So there are little points of bedrock sticking up everywhere.
Oh.
So, and then there is actually a pipe that comes right in this corner here from the barns. So I actually I do feel like this pit was probably pretty close to this depth back. Which is kind of surprising. So, but it probably made a nice bottom when they dug that out back in the day. So definitely a good thing to get this one abandoned. If that manure sits in there, it's gonna slowly infiltrate into our bedrock and get down into the groundwater, so. Pulled that manure out of there. Filled it back in with clean soils. Organic, I shouldn't say soil, because you can bury concrete in here, clean concrete. You can bury organic trees, non-treated wood, stuff like that. So he did bring in some wood chips, some other stuff that he had, or concrete around the farm, buried in the bottom, and then they top it off with soil. So after, you can see on the picture on the left, that's down to the clay, and it's really hard to see, but this right here is the bedrock sticking in. And there's pieces in there.
Have there been any, private well issues within that geographical area, contaminated wells?
I don't know of any.
I'd recommend they test their well. Right there, I would.
Yeah, if you're down
That's a
to
lot.
bedrock, you could have some issues.
Yep. And then in this situation, they want to farm over this at the end of it. So what we do is we just crown the soils over so the water sheds off of it. And he will plant this area into farmland after this. So
Probably gonna sink a foot or so, I know.
I already have warned him many, many times,
Yeah.
especially with the wood chips he threw in
Oh,
there
yeah.
and the trees and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's gonna, you know, you're gonna have to bring more stuff in. Yep, yeah, I know. You know, you're gonna have to bring more stuff in, yeah. So, yeah,
Now, were they able to do a lot of the digging and so forth themselves?
he tried it first. And then once he got in there, it was more of a challenge than I think he anticipated. And so then he hired somebody to come in and finish it.
Okay,
So he had actually to go out. Did you have a question, Dan?
Yeah, may I ask, how come they didn't clean it out before they, tried filling it in?
I think they had just built it on their own and they felt like they could abandon it on their own and never,
Yeah, but
you know, well, I didn't need a
uh,
permit to build it. Why should I need a permit to get rid of it?
Yeah,
was
you're
kind of their
supposed to spread
philosophy.
that on the field and got rid of it.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah, the problem, they push that soil and then it's deemed contaminated, all that clean soil, so then we have to treat it as that, so that's where it got complicated, but you're right, there is nutrient value there,
Nutrient value, and they farm, so.
yeah.
well, they told me they completely cleaned that out. My guess is they pumped out the liquids and then left the solids.
Let her dry
That's my
out.
guess.
Yeah, they didn't have a way to get it out either.
Yeah, they didn't have excavators. They
Mhm.
probably just pumped out what they could and then filled in the rest.
What town is this in?
This is Poigan.
Poigan.
oh, Poigan rules, that's what they were going by. Yeah.
So the good thing about this
We're
is
public here.
his money was based on the original depth and the design of the cow standing. We were able to go back, so we did a final survey on the finished excavation, did a comparison to what the final was to what the excavated area was, create a volume. And we're able to bring that back to the NRCS engineer and they were able to get him more funding because obviously he dug the hole a lot deeper than I had designed. So that's a lot more material that has to come back in, a lot more time. He had to pay a lot more money. I think on this one, he's gonna be out some money, but I think with this new money for him, it's gonna actually end up being about 90%, 80 to 90% cost sharing.
Of
So
what?
of what he had to pay out.
What's the project cost? 90% of?
So I don't,
Oh, you-
because it's through Equip, I think they were gonna get around 7,000. And I think the fill was about, it wasn't quite twice as much, but it was probably another 65-70% added into that.
Yeah.
So, I know he said he was at about $13,000 in cost.
Mhm.
So being that he was gonna get 7, I think he'll probably get about 70 to 80%, but the financial strengths with Equip are over into
Yeah.
CS.
It's a hard thing because. So we pay like per unit depending on the practice. So depending on the practice, if there's certain practices that require a lot more labor. So if the person does it themselves, you know, they could be making more ahead on it versus if it's hired out. Like through a
So they get
contract.
compensated, at least in book form, on their labor.
Well, it's
Right.
uh,
Labor's labor.
per unit. We don't care if it costs them $1, $1 million, you're getting this amount of cost.
That amount.
And that's usually determined before, but in this case, we're able to increase it because there was more upon investigating and once it was dug. So depending on the practice, sometimes people come ahead on it. And that's just something we can't control because I think they base the cost share rates like a 3-state, I think is Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois. And higher up people get together and they determine these rates based on the last, I think every 3 years, they kind of sit down and renegotiate like what the cost share rates per practice is, so.
And
Changes every year.
by coming out ahead, if the project's supposed to cost 10 grand and they do a lot of the work themselves, they can,
Yeah,
we're actually kind of compensating them for the time they put in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my point.
right.
Okay,
There's like a common one is the wetland scrape. You know, those can be up to an acre, and depending on if they have the equipment themselves to do it, it's costing them way less versus if they hire it out through a contractor, you know,
Yeah.
but we can't control that.
good deal
because-
for everybody.
Right, right.
Yeah, so we're able to get him more money, so he's gonna be very happy about that.
Well, that's
I know
right.
He was not so excited.
Taken care of.
Yeah, so just want to bring up a couple more examples just to kind of give you an idea of some of the differences that we have as well. Here's one that we did just in the last few years. When they were actually coming in to buy this farm, I was able to talk to them about, because I had already been looking at this pit because it was unused at that time. This is an old, I think it was Don Muscovich.
Are there 2 pits or is that a lake in a pit?
So that's a borrow area for the buildings. So they had dug this one here to bring fill up for buildings, which is pretty common. A lot of times you'll find a hole like that around farmsteads where they take material from. And this is actually a property line right here, so it's half on his and half on the other.
Yeah, sure.
This landowner wanted to get rid of that pit because he's got a very small area to have livestock in. The lot he bought is really small and he doesn't have anywhere else to go. So that is a big chunk of his barnyard right there. We just want to see it gone because he's not adding manure to it anymore and it's just sitting empty. And actually, I think this right here is a raft, so you could actually go out and float on there if you really want. Before they abandon it. So the challenges on this one is that, this area right here is like a drop off, so they would just push to the end of the barn and it would just drop in, so it's like a 6-foot, 8-foot wall down into that pit. So you have that limitation, so if I build this manure pit up, it's gonna back water into the barn, so, you know, that was a challenge itself. You've got this wetland right here. And, so basically what I told him is I can fill this in and we can abandon this pit, but you still have a pond right next to your barnyard. So you cannot bring an earthen lot right next to that pond because that water is gonna go from your barnyard, is gonna go into that pond. So we checked with DNR and RCS, made sure we were all covered, that it was not deemed wetland or anything like that. I said, either you can't have livestock in this area, you need a buffer, or you need this pond not to be here. And so after checking into it, they gave him the green light to fill in that area. He brought in fill, and as you can see here, it's no longer there. So that releases our resource concern of the water going down into the groundwater. He can bring livestock in here, utilize this yard. And we've eliminated the pit, the groundwater resource from the pit draining down in. And then eliminated that pond as well. So one of the things we have to do, this one had a concrete bottom. You have to break up all of that concrete, check underneath, make sure the manure has not infiltrated underneath the concrete, which on, Levi was out with me
Yeah,
for this one.
Yep.
So I had him taste the sediment.
Taste and smell test.
I try every time, they never go for it. So had him check underneath, there was no evidence of manure leaching underneath this concrete, so we were able just to leave the concrete in place. Crack it up so the water can go through it. And then filled it back in, so he can utilize it as barnyard. And then well, we just have to make sure that the water sheds away from that area and doesn't pond within. So he was able to shape it away from the building. And then has brought livestock back. Another one that we did recently was, what was it when you looked Keeney's, or then it was, so there was a landowner that I knew that had bought this property. We had been working with the previous landowner to try and abandon it, but then a bunch of things came up and it didn't end up happening. So when this landowner bought it, this is another challenge. It's one thing when you have a farm and you have a livestock storage and you decide you're not gonna have cows anymore. This guy just bought this property unknowing that he technically, legally had to fix this pit. So that is another problem that we have sometimes when people buy into properties that they're unaware. And they just sold the chunk with the farmstead, a little acreage around it, and this pit. So again, this was another equip one that we did. So there's two options you can do. You can fill them in, you can clean out all the manure and fill them in and crown it. Or you can dig all the manure out, get it down to good, clean clay soil, and then you can recreate it into a wetland area. Well, this landowner, even before we approached him, they loved the frogs. I don't know how many had 3 heads or missing legs, but the frogs in that area, and they loved just the wetland aspects about it. So they were very intrigued about just recreating that wetland area. So went out, did a survey. Obviously we don't want 2 to 1s on a wetland, so you kind of push in the slopes, recreate a more gradual grade. And then we were able to save it. On the left, you can see they're digging it out. On the right, this is kind of the final product right after construction. But you can still see some of the green in there. Obviously, we get the majority out, but there's always still a little tiny residual that's in there. There on the left, they're trying to create a beautiful fountain. Ooh, tickle. And then on the right, that's the final product after vegetation.
Wouldn't that be more the definition of a pond?
Actually, the water in here is quite shallow.
Or is it? Yeah.
It's deceiving in there. I feel like Sheila right now. Sheila always gets these tickles. So I'm gonna touch, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up too is we've got 3 pit abandonments coming. So they're gonna be crossing our plates pretty soon. One will be Bruce's.
Overton?
Overton is gonna be another. And then Pecky, Ledge Rock Dairy. So Overton is looking at creating a wetland. Bruce is gonna be filling his in, and I'm not sure on Pecky yet. We may be able just to, this is on a pretty steep side slope, we might be able just to pitch his pretty easy. So. But as he's come forward, you know, these are the steps that we're running into. Lydell and Charlie actually, Overton was one I did when I first started here.
Oh,
So,
really?
mhm,
Full circle.
yep,
So you're friends with Charlie?
yep, he's in the community van with me too,
Yeah.
so I get to talk to him all the time, but yeah,
My collar?
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
So,
I might, interesting question, and of course we have, Bruce Bowman coming up next, I believe. Are there gonna be any small dairy farmers left in this county?
They're disappearing fast.
Cause their cows are going like crazy.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've lost a lot in the last 10 years.
I mean, you got Ewald's, well, they got maybe 100 head.
they're
probably
milking 61 right now,
Getting to be the lot, yeah, but,
Yeah,
yeah.
yep.
uh,
It's becoming the larger dairies for sure. So it's transitioning.
You had mentioned that you didn't find any evidence of contaminant underneath the concrete. The one thing I know about concrete is it's guaranteed to crack no matter who pours it or how. One, I'm kind of curious, if you're throwing liquid manure in there, how does it not get underneath the concrete?
Well, and usually they put it tight to the clay,
Okay,
so there's not a layer of gravel under there.
Gotcha.
There's a layer of
Okay.
gravel.
yep,
Go everywhere.
yep, okay, that helps clarify that. At solid waste, everything we do, we have to have a poly something liner that goes underneath everything. Basically, that whole mountain of garbage is in a giant Ziploc bag, if you will. Do you feel that just having clay with the concrete on top, is that how you're building them now? Or are they going with one of those liners underneath them?
To be honest, I'm not, well, you mean a liner under the concrete?
Correct.
Okay. And sometimes they just put the liners in by themselves. And that makes me nervous because it just takes one bucket or something to catch that, and then they puncture a hole. And that's gonna move.
Yep, and,
They can do just clay, yes.
okay,
And then concrete, like, we're lucky here, we have a lot of clay, but you get west of here and they'll do concrete pits in sand. Makes me a little nervous, but I mean, that's.
yep. Well, that's why I'm wondering, I believe what we have to do is we end up putting down the liner, then we end up still putting down clay on top of the liner and doing it that way so that there's even protection under the clay, I believe. I do know when we put the liner on top of it, we have to have 2 feet of dirt on top of the liner, so forth. So I just think there's some membrane stuff out there that is way better than.
Usually the membranes I see more in sand country. You don't
Okay.
see as much around here.
Yep.
We have to make sure that we have so much clay underneath. So you have to do sub borings. You have to check the PI, the plasticity index and the percent fines in order for it just to be a clay pit. And then they have to excavate an additional, pretty sure it's just a foot, and recompact that around the whole entire pit. Usually at that point, that is just as costly as putting concrete down. So a lot of pits now will just go with, if all of their soils pass, they'll just do the clay with the concrete cover. Or if it doesn't pass, then they have to do liquid type with the water stop and all of that. But again, still concrete.
What's the depth of the concrete?
6 inches typically. You can, I think you can go 5, but 6 is,
With a lot of rebar,
yeah,
it's pretty heavy duty.
Well, that's,
number 4s.
And is there
18
a
inches on
PSI
center.
requirement?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's a lot of requirements now and they're constantly changing.
the building I used to do, I hated clay with a passion. Then I bought land up in Marinette, but it's all sand. And then I really started to like clay after that. So,
Sand has a tendency to fill itself back in.
yeah.
We do have a couple of people just building their first manure pits. We've got Mike Hintz down in Pickett. And then Nick Radloff is looking at building a pit coming up, and they are both 2 smaller operations, so that are still looking to grow and expand.
And they need permits through you or through Chad, and you monitor how the new pits are being built.
Yeah, so we issue the permits and then they'll go out and make sure the rebar's right, the concrete's right, or the specs with the concrete, so we're watching all that.
Oh, yeah.
And
Super. That has to be
then
all
40 years down the
documented.
road, your counterpart will say, oh, I'm so glad they did a good job building this pit because it's.
So the
Yeah.
one thing within the department, we used to design a lot of pits, it's become a lot more complicated, so the bigger pits, we're just leaning towards the private engineers to do it. Because it has become a lot more complicated.
And then they submit that to you.
That we review it, and then we talk to our engineers, we'll approve it, and then we permit it based on that approved
You
design.
have to get a stamp for the concrete designed by
Yeah.
Chad Casper,
Yeah.
Winnebago County.
There is, Nick's is gonna be kind of smaller. So we might still dabble with that one yet, working with our area engineers, but our area engineers can't even approve those right now. It has to go all the way to the state level for any pits. So they're really trying to hold that approval process at the state level as opposed to letting individual local municipalities or the debt cap.
Which I think is good, because it's truly a liability. So I
Yeah.
don't want that
Right.
liability on us, I'd rather it be
Yeah.
higher up, so.
And the other problem with these pits too, now, if you go with earthen to try and get the manure out and agitate, it wears on the liner so much. Most people that are building pits now, they don't even want to deal with that. They just want to go straight to concrete.
Mhm.
It's easier to get in and clean out. You can agitate without having to worry about it drawing up all that clay or ruining the liner. So
And now are these the same or different than the big blue tanks that are out there? Are those a self-contained pits?
so those
Or
those are what our harvesters.
I believe so,
Yeah.
yeah.
So those are above ground, so, I don't know that we've ever done technically a abandonment with those. We've had one disappear. But basically, everything's above ground, so once they
Okay.
get that out, they just break up that concrete underneath there is like
It's that,
Yeah, they take.
4 feet thick or something like this, 6 feet thick, so it's
So
like. a
that's
sock.
basically self-contained and doesn't
Mhm.
affect, okay.
Now, on these manure pits, if you're putting in a concrete bottom, it actually doesn't freeze, correct?
No.
I mean, the
It-
bottom's not freezing on it because it's,
Well, usually they try and get manure in the bottom before the freeze comes,
yeah.
especially if there's pipes coming in.
Yeah,
Because if you have a pipe coming in, that wind can go back into the pipe and freeze your end,
mhm.
and then it blocks into the building. So they like to have their pipes covered at least at the bottom before freeze up.
And I mention that because concrete breaks because of the freeze thaw
Yeah.
cycle.
Yep.
And if you get away from that cycle, you should have more of a longevity on the concrete itself.
yeah, one example as far as abandonments that I worked on years ago was they wanted to abandon the pit. It was built partially in a wetland, but they didn't have the fill. So instead of hauling and fill, what I did was design a wetland restoration right adjacent to it with a couple wetland scrapes, and then we took that fill and abandoned the pit. So we really got two practices and saved on cost. So we get creative when we're looking at these types of projects.
Yeah, I was trying to, as we were trying to find fill areas for Terry and Lynn out there too, trying to find sites close by, because that can even save money if they can pull the spoils from close by instead of having
Yeah.
a truck in. I was really trying to brainstorm, other options that would help save money.
Not always readily available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But like Mel mentioned with Lycos, the ones that we didn't permit back in the day, it is alarming. I had one that like Lycos with the bedrock. I mean, it was right down to bedrock. I mean, it was solid bedrock. So that goes right to our aquifer. It's just so good that we're getting some of these old pits abandoned
Yeah.
and cleaned up in the county. Less we have to worry about.
Yep. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that I should?
No, I'm glad you mentioned the other projects coming. Those are some large projects and there'll be some higher costs for those projects. So
Yeah,
Doug, you got a question, Doug?
I just wanted to know, have you worked with the Slikes?
Yep.
How many cows are they milking now?
Oh, good question.
I think they're probably around
2,000?
2,000, but they're adding another barn for another 500, I think, or another half barn. So they're probably somewhere between 2 and 3, I would guess.
And we did that pit last year. We did a big pit for them.
Yeah. They did
Yeah,
a
they
above
separate,
ground
right?
picketing.
They went liquid solid type thing. Don't they have actually two pits?
They have 4,
Or,
Yeah, it's constantly changing.
but the
because
other-
he keeps changing the process. I mean, he used to put in $1 million process to
Yeah.
run all the
Yeah,
manure through.
sand separation.
And then he didn't like it, so he
composter.
went to what?
I know he had the composter and he got
Yeah.
rid of that. And then he
Yeah.
had the sand separation, had it changed, and I think he went back to sand separation.
Well, he's looking to add sand separation lanes.
Lanes, okay.
So where you can lay it out, run some water, get the sand, but I don't know beyond that. Plus, they've had to convert so that they are collecting all of their feed storage runoff now too. So they had to put in a pit for the feed storage runoff as well last year. And a large pipping, 10 million gallon pipping structure for additional storage there as well, because they built a half of a freestall in 2022, at the end of the year in 2022. Then they're gonna build the other half this spring. Adding, so that added 1,000 cows probably.
We actually did a tour of that place once, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. That was the composter, I think we took you guys to.
Yeah,
Yep.
he called me over and let me know what he thought of government.
Oh, boy. Dave, you're talking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would.
Remember that.
If we're standing right here.
Already,
No, I've
maybe
worked,
we should do that again sometime. Let's see.
Yeah,
yeah, it's definitely a 100% containment on those.
So the Ewald project is coming along.
Yeah,
That's good.
you know, if we're gonna fix this one area, I'm gonna look at the whole farm and I'm gonna make sure we take care of everything that's going on there. Cause right now their milk house waste is going right into the ditch. The other barnyard is not functioning. The one that we did 20 years ago is not functioning the way it should, so we're gonna have to repair that.
That's the one you're referring to?
The freestall, the existing freestall lot, there used to be a picket and then a full buffer area. Well, they
Okay.
gravelled over that and they park equipment there now.
Yeah,
So we're gonna take a look at that one, repair the spreader to make it function, and then we're gonna work with them to try and make sure that that manure isn't getting to the ditch. But yeah, I was out with her and she's like, I'm like, well, we're gonna have to repair this one. She's like, gets this little face. She's like, but I'm not worried about this one. I was like, I know you're not, but I've gotta be worried about this. So we're gonna try and work with them, and they do a really good job of maintenance, cleaning the yards. As long as they can keep cleaning those yards and maintaining it, I think we can just fix the concrete spreader itself. And then we'll
And
just have to keep our eyes on it. Yeah, we're gonna expand it. In the other barnyard, we'll try and, I'm still trying to figure out if we can take all of that barnyard back towards the spreader, or if we're gonna have to bring part of it the other way. So we're in the middle of design. It's just kind of we're trying to make it as least cost option as possible. Just because they don't have a lot of money to spend on this project, so.
are we gonna put a little buffer in, I'll use your term, the ditch, between the actually where the cows come out of the barn in there, we're gonna put a berm or something in there, so no pollutants get down into the quote ditch.
So where they drive through right now will be a bucking wall and then a speed bump,
Yeah,
concrete speed bump to bring that back.
yeah,
Where that little, they have this little soup hole back. And then there's a small area that drains back towards this ditch. We're either gonna try and make that go the other way, or we're gonna have to figure out a way to pick it and then, and somehow vegetate over on that side as well. So we have to figure out with cut and fill if we can make it go the other way, or if we have to, if it still has to go the way it's going now, then we'll have to figure that out, because we can't have that runoff going. I mean, it's just short distance and then it's in the ditch, so. But again, trying to make sure that it's gonna work for them. Make sure that, the milk house waste is a big thing right now.
yeah,
If we do a tank and a pump system, that's something they're gonna have to haul all the time and be applying into their fields, or, they're gonna have to figure out a way to pump it, a way to haul it, and then a place to go with it. So, it's gonna be a very time consuming process. So right now we're looking at potential other options like bark bed treatment or something
Yeah.
that we can more work with as a filter.
cause you got labor issues there, you know, there's only.
Yeah.
When
and
are we gonna have that coming forward for approval by the committee? You pretty well got it that far yet or not?
No, we'll have to get the design finished.
Okay,
So right now we're gonna focus on that barnyard.
yeah,
We're gonna get that designed, hopefully get that done, or the two barnyards, I should say. Get the concrete work done, and then we'll move forward with a separate thing for the actual milk house waste system. And I don't know how much longer she's gonna be milking cows either, so that's the other hard part for me. When she's done milking cows, they're done milking cows. The kids aren't gonna take it over, so, in some ways, I worry that we're gonna spend some money on a milk house waste system that may or may not be utilized down the road. But you can't ignore it either. You know, if we're gonna pay for this, we gotta do something. So we still have to do some research on that. Figure out if there's a more simple system that'll work for them better. Hopefully we can find something.
Thank
So-
you, Mel. Any other question? Very, well done presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's to figure if there's more coming.
Down to
forward.
earth and good questions. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. It's good.
Thank you.
We have, if there aren't any more questions for Mel, we'll go to number 2. That's an action item, Land Water Conservation Department Spirit Fund Program Cost Share Agreements. What do we have here? 2 of them?
You have 2 agreements for this month. There's one for soil health through the Spirit Fund program with Richard Wisniewski. That's for cover crops and no-till. And then the other agreement is for Bruce for his waste storage abandonment.
Bruce, you can't vote on this, you know.
Well, he can't vote anyway because he's remote, which is the dumbest rule that was ever enacted on the history of the board.
Chuck's gonna get that changed for me
Oh,
with the new board.
Oh, we'll see. I'll try because I think there should be some.
could we
committee
need a motion?
So just for Bruce, there's 2 contracts. We have a county program and then the Spirit Fund program is the other portion of it. So this would be the other part for the Spirit Fund program.
And we're doing them both today, right?
Yep.
Okay. Wait a minute, I got my papers all stapled together, so give me.
We all do, Chuck.
Okay, so the first one up that I have on my order is for Wisniewski.
Yep, so we typically approve them all for the Spirit Fund program, so it'd be one motion, one approval for both of them, yep.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the cost share program for Wisniewski and Bruce Bone, and that is from the
I'm.
one is soil health.
Yeah, it's this, I separated because we have 2 spreadsheets, but it's all the Spirit Fund program.
Okay,
I move for approval of Spirit Funds for Richard Wisniewski and Bruce Bone Funds.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Bruce?
Yes, sir.
Any discussion, sir? You can speak to the subject.
I'll agree to approve them both, but I know I can't vote.
Okay, Bruce, thank you. Hearing no other discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, back to my agenda. Review the Land Water Conservation Department project list. You all should have a copy of that. And I believe we have, what, 6 new ones on here?
Yep. So again, I'm giving you all the hard and soft practices for the department. So the first page would be Harvey Meyer. I actually had Supervisor Buck reached out to me. This is in his district. That landowner was experiencing some flooding and some issues, so we're working with him on maybe doing a wetland scrape on that site. And then Ryan Otto is in Winchester, right by Quick Trip. He has some property there with some farmland, and he's interested in, it'd be our first buffer, conservation buffer in the department with the Spirit Fund program. It could be upwards of 7-8 acres that he's willing to put into the program. So we're working with him, and then he's also looking at doing a small wetland restoration as well.
Love to see the wetland restorations.
Yeah, those are nice practices. So this would be a nice complement where it's going towards this navigable stream. We put a wetland there, and then he would buffer the whole rest of the navigable stream. And then on the back,
Fine buffer.
there would be either cool season grasses. It could be a harvestable buffer, or we have our warm season native species as well. So we have some options with our buffer program.
So it's an at-grade vegetated buffer.
Yes. Yes, so we basically, it's gonna be from 35 feet minimum. And for the cool season, we can go up to 150 feet wide from the ordinary high. Warm season, it's 60 feet wide max for the warm
And
season.
what's the geographical size of this?
This could be around 8 acres.
80, oh, that's
Yeah, it's a pretty good one,
a
so
big buffer.
it's a big one, yeah. And then there's a 10-year option or 15-year option, and he's looking at the 10-year option, so.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's a really nice spot. There's some visibility with the frontage road there that we could maybe put some signage, which I want to get some signs made for the department to advertise like the programs more. We have some old signage here and I want to get some new updated stuff for the department.
Doesn't that drain back into, what's that marsh called back there? That's huge.
Rat River,
Rat River area, there's a
Mhm.
huge marsh back in there.
it's really close to that. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I just wanted to say that in all my years on this committee, I still don't know, I still have to reference the list at the bottom.
Yeah.
Of these sheets.
We live in a world of acronyms, Julie. It's crazy. You should see our list.
I can remember when they did the acronyms with no explanation. You remember that?
Oh,
We
man.
got after Tom Davies to kind of know it a little bit.
We developed an
So we know
acronym.
what everybody was talking about.
Uh-huh.
We have an acronym list for the department and I think it's up to 4 pages long with the acronyms we use
I
here.
know the
So,
one for Schneider Electric is probably about 150
Oh.
pages long.
wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. So that's the hard practices, and on the back side would be the soft practices. The first one would be the one you just approved for Richard Wisniewski. And then David Allen, he's already doing no-till, so he wants to start doing soil health systems, so we're gonna work with him on cover crops.
Did you say no-till?
Yes. Yes, so then he's gonna incorporate cover crops in with the system.
Okay,
So if he's already
not going
doing-
strip till, he's going no-till.
He's already doing no-till, so we
Yeah.
can't pay on both, because he's already
Yeah.
doing that, but we can for the cover crops.
Yeah,
And then Richard has a nutrient management plan, which we'll do through the state program, so we're enrolling him for a 590 plan. And then Dan, we're getting him enrolled with some cover crops as well.
good for you, Dan.
Yeah.
Before I adjourn, I was at a meeting yesterday, ARPA Commission. And the question, come up about the $3 billion we got. And, because there's an old report about the expenditures from that fund. So I didn't volunteer anything. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but at some point, if the questions continue, maybe we can just establish a list of people that are getting funding from the Spirit Fund money and the project.
Yeah,
Make everybody happy. You know?
I was thinking like an annual report. I mean, last year we didn't get up and running until the end of
No.
the year. But for this year, I thought I would do like an annual report to show what was enrolled,
Yeah,
practices, the units, everything. That's what I was thinking.
yeah.
So we could do
I
something like
think that
that.
might take care of it. Assuming the commission is reappointed, we're into that issue also. And
Does that commission all change with the election then? It probably, obviously will. There will be some.
yes, the ordinance establishing, well, I should say the resolution establishing the commission was for the term.
Okay.
So we discussed yesterday, should we have another resolution for the next term? Who should it include? Membership? Do you still need the citizen members? All that kind of criteria is gonna be worked out here.
How many more dollars have to be allocated with the ARPA funds? Is there still quite a bit left?
Well, Ethan gave me one that said we have 1.9 million in interest. Now I'm talking the community projects list, that side of it. And we had about 171,000 that had not been allocated yet. So I come up with about 2 million, and then the finance director quickly corrected me and said we have only got 1.2 million in interest, so totals maybe 1.4. The question was, do we want to transfer that to the other ledger, the other side, which would be the county projects? Or do we want to continue to distribute the money to, and reopen it for groups to reapply? And, allocate the other money.
So would
We
that
have an
make?
issue from the town of Winchester with their sanitary district.
Mhm.
When we start I'll comment on, elaborate here a little bit. When we start getting into tighter rules like the TMDL rule, 80%, which I think we all know is not achievable.
Thanks, Julie.
That,
Let you take care of it.
that affects the sanitary districts like Winchester and Butamore. It's gonna cost that sanitary district out there, which only services maybe a couple hundred homes, $6 million to upgrade to meet those standards. So, I think if the state's gonna come along with 80% reduction, they should pay for the 80% reduction. Cause I don't know how we, the people, are gonna do it. It's gonna be a real issue.
Yeah.
Just an example. Now, they're asking for funding from the Spirit Fund, but.
Yeah.
I don't know which way they wanna go.
Hmm.
So I think we're looking at, as we continue, we were all given under the MS4 5 years, I believe, to implement. During this next term and beyond, there's gonna have to be some hard decisions. Where we go and how we do that.
Yeah, the 83% reduction, that, like you said, it's not achievable. I mean, that's not possible.
It's gonna break the bank here too, Cause we're at 40% right now. I think everybody should understand. We've pretty much achieved that goal.
What? I'm confused.
Oh, it's technical, I'm sorry.
40% of what are we reducing? 40?
That goes into Lake Winnebago. It's-
Oh, okay.
So the reduction of pollutants has to be 40%, so specific pollutant is toxic.
Yeah.
Currently, they're looking at nitrogen, I think, down the road. So. Now, in 5 years, they want it to be 80% reduction. That's the issue, right now.
Gotcha.
But I have a question, and I'm gonna bring it up at exec committee meeting also. We keep reducing the pollutants going into the lake. The program's been going on for many years. But nobody ever gives me a report of the status of the lake each year. Or is it getting better? Is it getting worse?
I know the monitoring has gotten ramped up even more with the Winnebago lake plan that was done, so DNR is doing a lot more monitoring with box wolves, so I haven't heard anything as of recent, but it'd be interesting to see. I mean,
But
so
I
much,
assume it's getting better.
I mean, you look at, a lot of it depends on the water levels, right? And
Yeah.
if that vegetation has a nice response, your water clarity improves. But I would have to see recent sampling, what was done, but I'm hearing it's improving.
I hope so.
But again, we just have to have realistic expectations with that lake. I mean, it's always been that type of lake, and there's always gonna be phosphorus.
There's
There's
always
always.
It's just inherent.
It's,
And are we fixing it, or are the zebra mussels fixing it?
Yeah,
Right,
that's been brought to
The
light.
zebra mussels like to eat a lot of shit, so
Mm.
that's,
Mm.
maybe we just need
Yeah.
more zebra mussels.
they don't need the credit given to them. We'll take some of the credit.
Really, are you sure you don't want to get back on?
Yeah.
You're
Sure.
gonna miss all the fun. It's been really good work.
Great, and
Yeah.
thank you all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
been a pleasure.
I've been on this meeting 6.
Chuck, any possibility that spirit funds could be used for those power washers at the, when
We may reapply.
boats come out of the water, they can use those power washers, so the invasive
We did.
species.
Thank
Just so you know,
Bye-bye.
Julie, you're welcome to come and,
Anytime
we
you want.
don't have public participation much, so, and we got snacks, so.
Yeah,
No, then I have to go back, now I have to go and make up like over an hour and a half of time for the week for this meeting.
We'll get on it.
Appreciate the
But
dedication.
you can come visit anytime.
take care. If you ever
Take care,
change
too.
jobs, jump back in.
Yes.
How's that sound? Take care.
Bye.
I don't know, they can bring it forward, but they shut everything off now. You had that August
Yeah.
deadline thing.
Oh,
The only thing that was added in, but that's on the county side of the ledger, was parks, request for 3.9 million. Are we off the air here?
We need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I need a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
All right.
I.
We are adjourned. The only